So a lot of the times people will use destructive coping mechanisms, and that destructive coping mechanism could be, sitting down thinking about your problems, thinking about the past. That's destructive because what is it doing? A, is wasting time. B, it's doing nothing. So in order to balance that destructive coping skill, you're missing out on things, right? You're missing out on fun with friends, right? We're at home and we don't want to go anywhere. We don't want to go out. We're isolating ourselves. We're putting ourselves in a deep, darker hole. So when someone does ask us out, it's hard to do that because we're so comfortable with this pain that we feel that we can't shake. So by using that as a coping mechanism, technically it's destructive, right? So when you're in this motion and you're feeling you're not your best, the best thing for you to do is to go out. You're missing out on good things. You never know when you go out what emotion that's gonna, give for you. Another one. This one is very common, and this is how addiction starts. People will engage in alcohol, drugs, because they're suppressing what is actually going on inside here, and they don't want this to continue to work. So they suppress their emotions by using, right? Because if you use, you forget what's actually in your reality. It's kind of like, it reminds me of a pot. When you have a pot full of whatever the pot may be, and you're going to continue to stuff everything that's going on, right? Because you're just like smoking, or you're drinking, or you're using methamphetamines, and the problems are still piling up. But eventually that pot is going to burst, and then it's going to be even more overwhelming, where you're going to want to continue to use, because then it's like, dang, that pot got bigger than I thought it was, right? Because you were distracted, and that distraction actually caused you more harm rather than dealing with the emotion. Instead of using a coping skill, whether that's like going for a walk, simply going for a mindfulness walk, just pushing yourself day by day. Of course, everybody that's going through these negative emotions, and maybe you have depression, and maybe you have anxiety, and of course, I tell my clients, it doesn't go away, but you can manage it. You can manage it so you can fulfill a happy lifestyle. And some people are diagnosed and some people are undiagnosed. I don't know what you guys are going through. But I'm hoping that me explaining this to you, that you will utilize this and change your life and make it work for you, right? It may not work for everybody, everything that I'm saying on here, but I do encourage you guys just to give it a try, because you don't know unless you try. So getting into my next destructive coping. With this one, I don't really like this one, but sometimes people take their pain and their feelings out on other people. Maybe you're lashing out on your husband, you're lashing out on your wife, you're lashing on your kids, or maybe even your friends. But that's a negative coping mechanism, and maybe you may not see that right now, because I hope that people aren't intentionally doing that. But that is a coping mechanism that people do and tend to not notice that. So if you're watching this video and maybe you've lashed out and noticed this pattern of you lashing out, maybe analyze that and think like, man, why am I really lashing out? Like, what benefit is that giving me? It's honestly drowning you. Remember I talked about the tidal waves? It's actually drowning you more than it's serving you. So, and then the negative about it, you lose friends. You lose family members, because that's not who you truly are, right? Because you're going through a lot. So you're like just roaring at people, and I think you guys get the point. And lastly, for the destructive coping mechanisms, this one, very dangerous. Some people will cut themselves. Some people will cut their hair. They'll just engage in dangerous behaviors because they can't get out of their head. So I encourage you to stop that. It's not doing anything but possibly putting you in harm, possibly putting you to death, right? It's not okay. So it's not good. I guess this is my last one. I realize there's one more that's super important, and I think this is another one that people don't realize that they do. And this is engaging in sexual behavior. Some people cope that way, right? They're just like having multiple sex partners, or they're just going through life, just like using sex as a coping mechanism is not okay. Yes, you get arousal, but then it creates that addiction, right? And I'm not saying that this is, well, it could be how this that's how a sex addiction is created. But also it's like really unhealthy because, again, that pot that I talked about, right? You're not dealing with it. You're just using sex to suppress what's really going on because you're getting the benefit out of it. You're getting that, you know, that arousal that everybody drives for. But that isn't really, in the long run, you're like hurting people. So I think just dealing with your emotion and not using sex as a coping mechanism.